Welcome back, everyone, to the Engineered Life podcast powered by Kahua. This is a show about the future of construction without all the fancy buzzwords. Instead, we try to have honest, human, and practical conversations about what's actually working, what might not be working, and some of the things that we're still trying to figure out. In each episode, we sit down with someone who has a unique superpower that they're using to make the industry better. And today is really cool because I'm joined by Andy Richardson of 29E6, but also of the ENHANCE podcast. So both of those places. If you have not had a chance to listen to Andy, let me tell you, he has an incredible superpower, and that's the ability to make complex engineering depth feel approachable without dumbing it down. Andy, it's great to have you here today.
Great to be here, AJ.
So I mentioned your superpower is to take complex and make it approachable, specifically when it comes to engineering. Would you agree with that, or would you describe it a little differently?
Yeah, and was that something that I told you on my website, or you came up with that?
No. Yeah, I came up with that. That's my assessment of what you're really good at. Yep.
I mean, I would say, well, I'm humbled by that, and I appreciate that, and also thanks for having me on, by the way. But yeah, I think that's a good analysis um, because I really find myself in that situation my whole career. Whether it's teaching myself, right? So I came into engineering 27 years ago. And, you know, I'm thankful for the people that I had around me that helped me, but I really didn't, and thankful for the opportunity my first boss gave me, but really, he didn't give me a lot of mentorship, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn myself, and I had to do what you just described for myself, which is I had to kind of dumb it down like, okay, what's going on here? And engineering is a very complex thing, just like construction, just like architecture, not that I mean, it's special to me because that's what I do, but it's special in its own way, right?
Right.
So I have a colleague that I used to work with. His name was Buck, and he was a drafter, but he also had an engineering background. And he said, "I'm a simply supported beam in an indeterminate world." And I was like, "That's a great quote." So maybe all your listeners aren't engineers; don't know what indeterminate means, but it's an indeterminate frame. Like it's literally you can't calculate it with hand calculation methods. You have to use either approximate methods or other methods. So one thing we do in engineering is we simplify things. I mean, everything we do really is simplification, actually, because you can't actually analyze a building perfectly, which may sound scary, right? But it's true because we have to use mathematical models to design buildings. And so, even like if you look at Isaac Newton and the formula for gravity, it's not perfect, right? Like
Right.
9.87 or 32.2 if you're 32.2 feet per second squared, right? That's the acceleration of gravity.
Right.
So the point of that is it's a model, right? And it's pretty dang close, but it's not perfect. So the point of all that is simply supported beam in an indeterminate world is we have to simplify things as engineers in order to understand them, right? And so as I thought back to my very first day and starting out, even going all the way back to college, that's what I had to do is I had to understand it. And I really enjoy learning. I love learning, right? And so I think that's what has driven me as a mentor to now fast forward 27 years later. I had to learn these things. I had to grow. I had to read. I mean, I would read voraciously. Even one of my podcast episodes was my wife was picking on me about how I read engineering manuals in the bathtub sometimes. And she's like, "What's up with that?" But and I do actually, but it's just because I have a love for learning, and so people that learn also generally are good teachers, I think. And so because you've figured out like, okay, this is what it means, and now I'm going to share that with somebody else. You want to share that with other people. And so now my goal is to give back, right? So give back to my team, the people that work with me, give back even like on LinkedIn, and the podcast is a I mean, obviously it's for marketing reasons, right? But I want to give back what some of this knowledge that I've learned, and I realized, wow, I've got some information that people could benefit from. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think that's part of what I try to do with some of the mentorship is give back and try to distill it down to something that makes sense to people.
So at what point then, because you talk about in there just that desire to learn and to understand these topics very deeply. But that's very different than being able to explain them, right? There's a key
Mhm,
difference between understanding something and being able to explain something.
mhm.
When did you realize that those were two different skills to kind of get yourself to that next level?
Well, actually, I took a little bit of a segue in 2012 or so, 2008, 2012. There was this thing called the Great Recession,
Yeah, yes.
and I got let go. I started my own business, and then also it, even though I had my own business, it really wasn't enough to support my family. Well, it kind of was, but it also wasn't enough for me to do. Right, like it was actually kind of nice because I could work 20 hours a week and I mean, basically, I could feed my family, but I still had 20 hours a week left because I was done with everything. So I started this other business where I would do some teaching for a company called PPI, and I also started a website for teaching engineering because of this idea of learning and teaching, which again go hand in hand. And wanted to share some of these things, and also thought, well, maybe I could make some extra cash doing this. So the point of that is. I started teaching, and that was the first time in my life I really done any teaching. It was just something I thought I might want to do and I might enjoy, and it was basically putting myself out there, really. And so I had to learn how do you teach, And I thought back to some of my professors at Clemson that I had that I really enjoyed. One of them, which is Sergi. So if anybody is in my that remembers him or went to Clemson and had him, they know who I'm talking about. And there were others, but as an example, and the thing about engineering is oftentimes we do quite the opposite. We take complex things and we make them more complex.
Right. Yep.
So like for example, concrete. I mean, it's basically mud, right? It's cement, rocks, sand, and so if you look at the books, it talks about aggregate, fine aggregate, coarse aggregate. And Sergi's like, look, we're talking about rocks, okay? We have small rocks and we have big rocks. And so now that's, you might say, well, that's a little redneck for me. Like that just sounds, I'm oversimplifying it. And maybe it can get that way sometimes, but you're trying to share with a 18 or 20-year-old in that case in college, like what is aggregate? What is, and there's basically you're talking about rocks, big rocks, small rocks. And so I thought back to him. I thought, I'm a good old boy. I can share things as I'm teaching the ACE to PE or the PPI stuff and the PE exam. I can share things in a good old boy way. We're talking about
Right.
beams and a shear moment diagram, and it doesn't have to get into. We don't have to use fancy terms to explain these mathematical complications that are already complications. So we're adding a complicated layer on top of something that's already complicated. We can take it and simplify it, right? Like, so that's sort of how one of the things that I think I started realizing you can do, and just a different way of thinking. I kind of am a probably a creative. I consider myself a creative person, and so I like to draw, I like to sketch, and so I kind of use illustrations a lot of times, like you can see here.
Hmm.
I mean, this is an example here, as a matter of fact. Like, when we have our meetings, so we're a remote company, and I know this is an audio first pod, but if they're on YouTube, they can see these diagrams behind me in my whiteboard, and just we're having a Google Meet on a team meeting or like a one-on-one, and I just go and show them like, hey, this is how a drag diagram works on a shear wall. and you have shear going in, you have shear going out, and you're trying to figure out that kind of thing. So I think diagrams and pictures can help. And so I would do a lot of diagramming when I did my teaching, and I'd have this crazy, at the end of it, I've had all these sketches and things, and it would be like people like, hey, can we start on a sheet of new paper?
Yeah.
But I think some of that kind of thing can help too. So
So,
those are some of the
so
things I think about.
do you think that clarity is a lost skill in engineering today, or do you think people just take for granted what they assume others know?
Mm. Do I think that's a lost skill, to do the simplification or the drawings?
Yeah, to
Yeah,
get
I mean,
just to give clarity, right?
yeah, I mean, I think some people have it, some people don't have it, and I'm still learning what that means actually as well. And it's a two-way street too, because I don't know if you really understand what I'm talking about, and if you just shake your head yes. And so that's part of the communication is try to listen some too, and make sure they're listening, and try to get some feedback and ask questions, right? That's the uh I forgot the po- stoic, that's anyway, the questioning method, right?
Yep.
Is asking questions, and I'll think about it in a little bit. So is it a lost skill though? I don't know. I mean, I think it's something that people can learn, and yeah, I think there's still people playing out there that are trying to grow into this. It's more of some people have that desire to mentor, and some people don't, and so it's really a want to versus a how to. So if you got to learn that you want to do that, you got to realize, hey, I have something here that I need to learn. Maybe it's you're on the front end of your career, like I was at 27 years ago. And so you have to break it down and learn it. And so you're the person asking questions. You're the person reading voraciously. And then also, even in those early days, you want to help others, right? Like share your journey online or with your team, and share with what you're learning, or document it some way. And I think that would help you, because then in 10 years, 20 years, you're going to look back and somebody else might benefit from that. So I don't know that it's a lost art. I think it's just people need to realize the importance of it.
Yeah, and I mean, at 29E6, it's one of your core tenants, right? Providing clarity to customers. So, with that in mind, as you work with customers each day, what's one thing that you wished more non-engineers understood about how engineering decisions need to be made?
Mm, wow. Uh, I mean, I think just we need more columns, and that's a good question. I think it's so hard for me to think like that, because I my focus is so opposite of what you just described. Is I take whatever the architect gives me, and I make it work. That's what we do. So for me to take that and flip it on its side is just so difficult for me, because I almost can't do that. But I think if it would be this idea that we really I'm willing to do whatever it takes to serve you and do that what I just described, which is make what you have work, but don't make me do it twice. That's the big
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So don't make me do it twice. Let's get the design fixed. Let's have a schedule and get me paid. I mean, I'm trying to run a business here. So those are some of the things I would prefer. But as far as your design, hey, your design is your design. I'm going to make it work, and we're going to make it work. Now, it may cost more if you want to do something crazy, but that would be another aspect of it is, your decisions, uh, impact cost.
Right.
And some things are more complicated than others. So, but one of the things we really want to do is just to understand what your design is, and that's really what our entire process is all about.
So so speaking of those decisions, do you have an example, one that you're allowed to share anyway, where like a small decision made big consequences?
Yeah, I got a great example. It's not a big job, okay, and actually, it was almost a watershed moment for us, or for me, in terms of our process, because It's right down the road here in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's called Substation 2. So it's like a subway, kind of like a, I don't know if you probably don't have that because it's like a very localized franchise. But anyway, so it's a box building, a small box sandwich shop, right? And some glass on it. Now, in structural engineering, the more glass means the more, and it's a wood frame job, by the way. So, when you have a lot of glass, that means less walls for shear, for
Hmm.
lateral, and we're in a high hurricane area. So, we need shear walls to help support to create a lateral effect, right? And so when we add a lot of steel on, or sorry, glass on it, it gets rid of the walls, and then we need steel. And so just meeting with the architect really early up front and saying, hey, if we just had literally, instead of doing the glass along the whole front of this, and he had like, Sharpie sketches, very early sketches, right? Like design development. And I said, if we could just, instead of having glass along the whole front, if we just had some maybe 4 foot on each end to provide a shear wall, we could get rid of this steel frame. And this building can't really justify a steel frame, right? And I think he even had, if you add it up, that would be 8 feet of shear. But he probably had 8 foot, but it was spread out in between the
Oh, yeah,
glass.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but those 8 foot, those segments that are tiny, like really short, they don't count in the wood code. They're too narrow. It's basically like dead wood, if effectively. I mean, it helps with gravity, but not with lateral. So by moving all of that out into two defined spots, we were able to get rid of steel. And so that had an implication. So the watershed aspect of that was twofold. One, we realized that earlier we had that conversation, we didn't have to rework the job. And because if he would have just done that, then we had and like did some drawings and Revit and such, and then we would have said, that's fine, but we're gonna have to do a steel frame, and then he'd have to rework, and then we'd have to rework,
Right.
and
Yep.
everybody's paying more, right? And nobody's happy, or even got to the pricing stage, and then the contractor's not happy because he had to price it, and the fabricator priced out a steel frame, and for nothing, because we know that's not going to happen. Like we know that steel frame's not going to go in that building. So anyway, it helped us realize the earlier we had that conversation with the architect, the better. And so that's when we really had this idea about the structural charrette, which is something we do early on to help build these conversations around what is the building. But that's an example of something we did where we were able to make a decision early on to help impact the job.
That makes sense. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Enhance some in your
Okay.
podcast. First off, great show. Love listening to it. Um, it has a different tone than most in the industry, which is what I love about it. When you started the show, was that a gap you were trying to fill, or what exactly were you after? Like, what was your
Mm.
goal with Enhance that you were looking to fill in the AEC industry?
Um, I mean, I don't know if I was looking at the industry as a whole, in that way. I mean, I just was doing what I wanted to do, frankly. But it was a few things had started it. I mean, kind of like what I said with starting the PE exam and all. It was just something I wanted to do, and I was totally nervous about it, by the way, because I mean, this is out of my comfort zone. What I found though, I will say is I do actually enjoy this in a weird way. Like even
Yeah.
being on with you today, and you're doing a great job. So I love your podcast too. But it's a little bit out of my comfort zone. So it was just something I wanted to do. But the reason I wanted to do it was really for marketing. And I read a book called They Ask You Answer. Basically it was more of a blogging kind of thing. Like if people are asking questions about your industry, like, hey, what is a steel frame, or when do I need an engineer? Then you would just write a blog about it, right? And so what does that have to do with a podcast? Well, I I don't know, probably got an idea on LinkedIn or something where people talk about, hey, do an interview with people, and then like an architect or another or one of your team, and then you can generate these type of blogs. Again, this was a few years ago. So I couldn't really make that happen for some reason. I don't know why, but I think it had to do with the fact that it's hard to get somebody to do an interview with you if you don't have a forum. And so the podcast really became a forum for that, right? So, hey, I want to find out about Engine Nerd life, and I'm going to get AJ on. But it would be awkward. It would be a little bit more awkward to have you on. I'm sure you would do that, but if I had a podcast, you'd be like, "Yeah, I'll come onto the podcast," or
Right.
an architect maybe in the community that I've never really talked to, and I'm like, "Hey, you wanna jump on the pod?" And they'll do it. So it sort of did some of the content aspect and then also the relationship building. Now it's both of those things, plus it's fun for me. I mean, and I don't know, I meet new people like you. Like I mean, well, you and I met in a different forum, but now we're growing our relationship and deepening it.
Right.
So that's some of the benefits of it that I'm finding. So it's something that I really have a good time with.
That's awesome. And one of the things that you do so well is you ask questions that invite honesty without like building defensive mechanisms. Is that is that intentional or is that just who you are?
I think that's just who I am. I'm not a conflict guy. I've got an engineer that does that for me with the construction. But if I have to, I do go. I mean, I really just hate that part. But yeah, and I think it's just the questioning method again, just letting people be themselves, kind of like what you were saying earlier, or I think in our intro portion, just, be yourself. And yeah, I'm just asking questions, just trying to let the conversation go. I'm just trying to find out more about them and what their story is. And that's really what it's all about. So everybody's got an interesting story in construction. And we all have a certain background that's unique. We all have a different path that we've gone through, and it's just interesting, right? And then we all have our why, which is really what we're trying to drill into with enhance is
Mhm.
how are you enhancing the world around you? Are you stacking bricks, or are you building a cathedral? I mean, that's episode 1. And you know, so if you want to go check it out, which I mean, not trying to self plug, but I mean, that's what the idea of the show is. Because when you're out there building something literally or drawing lines on a page, are you doing calculations or are you designing? I don't remember what this building was. Are you designing a cool retail building, which is somebody's dream, by the way? That's
Right.
somebody's dream to build that building right there, right? It's these calcs. It's not just calcs. It's somebody's dream, and maybe their dream is to make money on the development. That's cool. That's what they wanna do. But it's a cool building, and we get to drive by and look at it and say, "Hey, I did that." And, it's like what you said on our podcast, so I'll plug you on on there, which is construction's cool. And it's like, that's so true. It's such a cool thing that we get to be a part of that, and my story of it and the story of Enhance is, why are you doing it? And how are you enhancing the world around you?
So, what's the most surprising answer you've received then? Like an answer that just kind of stopped you and really made you think while you were
Well, so far, um, let's just say this, some of the answers have been more inspirational than others. Um, and actually that's been the surprise has been, from a generic standpoint, has been that I've been so inspired by almost every single person, right? But the one that surprised me the most was actually, I that it was on the other end. It didn't feel really inspirational at all. It was like, I just wanna make money. And I don't know, that just hit me the wrong way. It was kind of funny because I think, be yourself, right? So,
right.
in that regard, good. You said what you really believe, and you did not pull any punches. So for that, I appreciate it. You know, and maybe some of the other people weren't. Maybe that's like other people were like, "Oh, I'm just going to say this thing," And one of the things I say about the show is, it sounds like a Miss America pageant when I ask this question, right?
Mhm.
Like, hey, how do you enhance the world around you, right? And you're right, that does sound different in the AEC industry, right? But at the end of the day, we all do have a dream to do something cool, right? Which is,
Right.
I mean, if I'm a mason, I built this masonry business and your dream might be to make money actually, so I can drive a killer F-350 down the road with lights shining on my tires, right? That might be your dream. And so he put it that way. I mean, that's okay, right? I think that's okay. It just surprised me. So,
Yep.
but I've really had some awesome inspirational stories. You know, people from over like out of this country that have made their dreams happen here in the U.S. and people like you. Construction's cool. I mean, there's just so many different cool stories that we have, and to me, it's exciting, and that's what's inspiring to me, and also educational. It's not just a Miss America piece, right? It's
Right.
learning like, okay, Tyler Cease and learning about connections and steel and learning about Jane Frederick, hot and humidity. So that's part of it too. We want to know the what and the why is what we're trying to do.
So when you get into some of those what conversations, getting back to kind of your superpower with clarity, is it ever difficult to get a guest to kind of bring the level of conversation back down so that the message is there for those listening and it's not too deep?
Hmm. I haven't really had that too much. I really haven't had too much of an issue with that. And sometimes I have to say, like, because I might be talking to somebody in my field, like connections or steel,
Hmm.
and so they'll say like shop drawings, or which I think most people in the AEC industry understand shops, but maybe we have somebody listening over the fence because I want my show to be like This Old House, Bob Vila, where I'm not a contractor, I'm not a homeowner, or sorry, I'm not a contractor or like an engineer. I don't know what these studs and stuff is, but but people will sit around their house and watch This Old House, or I'm kind of dating myself, I think, with that. What's the new guy? Ty Pennington.
Yep.
But you get the idea. I want people to listen in, so I have to kind of explain, like, hey, what is a shop drawing, or and let them explain what that is, so that people listening from outside of the AEC industry might be able to understand it. Or maybe you're an architect, you don't understand engineering, or engineer, you don't understand, what I forgot the term that Jane had said, but I don't even remember, vernacular, like Southern vernacular, contemporary. Like I didn't know what that meant, so I had to, and I didn't actually know what it meant, so I had to have her help me understand it, and these different like architectural styles. So, I mean, that's the cool thing for me is I'm not a that's one of the aspects of it is it's AEC, so it's learning more about these deep architectural aspects and things. So that's part of what I've enjoyed about it, and I try to get at least half of my interviews architects because that's our number one customer. So I've learned a lot about like different approaches to architecture and the mentalities. It's been quite interesting.
That is pretty cool. And like, so let's assume, right, that one of those folks, like you were saying, is sitting around and listening to a show like this, even if they're not in the AEC industry. And because your superpower of clarity is a practical skill, regardless of what industry you're in. And it's a learned skill, right? Like if I'm sitting in my car right now listening to this, or my office, or in the gym, and I'm wondering how I could put a skill like that to use, what's one tip you have for folks that would help them simplify their communication style?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think how would I simplify how what tip would I give to somebody to help simplify their communication style? So that's one thing I did just then as I clarified the question in my brain to make sure I'm answering the right question, right?
Yep.
So that's number one is listen and make sure you know what the other person is asking, and then break it down, simply supported beam in an indeterminate world, right? So how can I how what's the basics here? And what's the fundamental basics? when you step back and you look at it from 10,000 feet, and engineers, we like to look at everything from, really granular. But if I step back and look at what the basic fundamentals are, what's the 80/20 that's going to matter the most? And start thinking about that, and then that's what you want to share. And usually a lot of times things come in, like threes. There's a reason why, like the Bible has the Trinity and things that are coming in threes oftentimes. It's the triad mentality. So, like share three things. So, like I could do it right now. So, listen would be one. Break it down into a things, simple aspects and the basics. And then the third one would be just try to be clear about your deliver it in a clear way. And I'm gonna do the fourth one right now, which is don't try to, or part of the third one, which is try not to go on too much. So there is a point at which you just have to stop and listen and say, "Hey, AJ, did you have any questions about that, or did all of that did all of that resonate with you?"
Yeah, that's perfect. And then kind of on the flip side with that, because AI is a big buzzword right now, and a lot of people are out there trying to use it as a way to communicate better or to learn things quicker, right? If you were talking to a young engineer or a young professional today listening, what is another skill, just whether it be clarity or listening or something else, but what is it? What's a intangible life skill you'd recommend a young professional learn that no software or AI could ever replace?
Hmm. I mean, just care. I mean, care about other people, and because ultimately that's what I mean, a computer can do that, right? And you say,
Exactly.
what does that have to do with the AEC industry? What does it have to do with business? It has everything to do with business,
Hmm.
and it has everything to do with life ultimately, and that goes back to the enhanced mentality of what's your bigger purpose in life, so have a purpose, but also care about other people. And that's what, if you think about it, that's what a lot of what I've been talking about is about, either directly or indirectly. It's okay. I'm tr I mean, obviously, I'm trying to serve my family and make a buck so I can, feed my family and so forth, but I'm also doing I mean, I don't have to run this business. I could just do my own thing and, be a sole practitioner and probably make just about the same or maybe even more, I don't know, but the point is, I actually see value in giving back to my team and growing this team. I mean, there's benefits to that. And then also the mentorship, the things we do, like with this podcast, we're sharing our ideas with the community. I mean, we're not charging for this, and I mean, I think there's a lot of value in the things that we've shared today. Personally, of course, I'm biased, but
Yeah.
so I think ultimately it boils down to that: care about other people, and y- you can't lose in that regard if you just
Yeah.
care about other people.
I love that. Um, Andy, wow, I seriously, I can't thank you enough for joining me today on the show. Your honesty, your clarity, and your perspectives. It's been great. I've really enjoyed this chat. Thank you.
Definitely, AJ. It's been a pleasure to be on here. It's been a lot of fun too. So glad that I brought some
Awesome.
superpowers today.
You did. You did. For those of you listening, if any of this conversation resonated with you, take one of those ideas that Andy mentioned and try it today. See what happens. And also, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe or rate the show, or share it with someone else who cares about updating the future of construction. Because remember, construction's cool. Go tell your friends. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.